Welcome to the Lord of the Rings Lorecast, the show that explores the background of Tolkien's amazing world from the very beginning. I've spoken a number of times on this show about Tolkien's ability to read people, to understand humanity, to see not only individuals and how individuals work, but we together as a collective seem to operate. And I would guess that this is a result of him not only being an extremely intelligent individual, somebody who is both very smart, thinks very clearly, and also highly educated, but also somebody who lived through momentous times, multiple world wars, political changes, technological advancement, all sorts of things that we continue to live through today. And if you are paying attention, you will start to notice the patterns and the trends, the ways that people react to these changes, the things that make things better and the things that seem to make things worse. He seemed to have a hyper awareness of the nature of human beings and the way that we operate, and also a longer view of things. Not just the way we operate in a specific situation, but the reasons why those things either work or they don't. The reasons why some people come out as being more wise in the end and others, well, they seem like fools. That is not something you can judge based on 5 minutes after a conversation. It's usually something that you determine later. Now, what am I talking about here? I'm talking about chapter 14, Fire and Water, because in this chapter, we have the events of Laketown being attacked by the dragon, but not just the attack by the dragon, not just the defense and the reactions of the people in order to either fight back or protect the town or evacuate. Not just that, but the human reaction of seeing something dangerous on the horizon and how they choose to respond to it. Now, you could draw all sorts of analogies about real-world situations, the nature of soldiers in war, how some would cower and not be able to move at all, while others would feel nothing and still be able to charge into battle, somehow overcoming that terror. Also, in our modern, postmodern world, the way that the world changes, the nature of political change and technological change, the fear of AI, the fear of the other political party gaining control and changing the reality of the world around us. All of these things are terrors on the horizon at times that we have to deal with. And Tolkien understood the ways that people respond to these things. Often, they respond in denial. In fact, more often than not, they respond in denial. But sometimes, there are some people who are able to hold on to the fear of the thing in order to actually react. Not in an emotional way, but in a rational way. In a way where they can make the better decision, even when everything around them is falling apart, even when their emotions are telling them to run. They can stand and they can make a difference. These people are heroes and leaders. It's not the people who gain the most public acceptance. Oftentimes, those people are the people who tell the public exactly what they think they want to hear in order to gain power. The real leaders are the ones who step up and do something even when everyone else is going the other way. And Tolkien understood this. Bard is an example of this, and we're going to get into it in this episode because it is very interesting the way he sets this up. So let's get into it. Chapter 14, Fire and Water. So as the dwarves have now explored Erebor and the surrounding area out front of the mountain, we're jumping back 2 days because the events of the dragon leaving the mountain haven't been explained yet. We know that Smaug smashes through the door and he flies off in a rage. But what happens? Well, we're immediately told that the men of Laketown were mostly indoors. And there's a specific reason for this. The breeze was from the black east and chill. Nature has a way in Tolkien's work of responding to the tone of what's about to happen and what's going on. When the breeze is not pleasant, when the smell of the air is bad, when there is fire, when there are clouds, when there is fog, any of these kinds of things, we know something bad is about to happen. And we immediately get another glimpse of nature here. We're told that there were some people walking around. They were fond of doing this. The stars shine out from the smooth patches of the lake as they opened in the sky. We see this reflection of the stars in the lake, and we're reminded here of this beauty, but not only this beauty, but this connection of these specific people to the stars, which are always a sign of something good, and directly connect to the elves and their connection to the stars, and back to the Valar. So we're put in a juxtaposition again, a black, chill wind coming from the east, and yet people who are still out there to see something good. We're reminded that they don't like looking at the mountain very much, but they do on occasion with curiosity, and they kind of see it poking through the hills. Then we get this. Suddenly it flickered back to view. A brief glow touched it and faded. "Look," said one, "the lights again. Last night the watchman saw them start and fade from midnight until dawn. Something is happening up there." Now, they're starting to take note, and the flashing of lights in the distance are something that is very odd. They normally don't see this because there's no light near the mountain. There's nobody living in the mountain except for the dragon, and the dragon hasn't come out in, well, generations at this point. So the people are curious, and they're going to respond the way that I foreshadowed in the beginning. "Perhaps the king under the mountain is forging gold," said another. "It is long since he went north. It is time the songs began to prove themselves again." Now, this clearly seems like folly to just blindly hope that the dwarves somehow got rid of the dragon and very quickly got back to making stuff in their mountain. And somehow this was shining light out of the front gates, I guess. It seems like the more you think about it, the more this doesn't make any sense. And it is clearly just an emotional reaction. But it feels like something very common. How many times do we see something and we go, oh, it's probably this, and then it just isn't? But then we get a response. "Which king?" said another with a grim voice. "As like as not, it is the marauding fire of the dragon, the only king under the mountain we have ever known." A much more realistic interpretation, but this voice, this individual, is seen as a pessimist. "You are always foreboding gloomy things," said the others. "Anything from floods to poisoned fish. Think of something cheerful." Now, when you think about the nature of these individuals and their job as citizens of this town, of people who live here, of men of this town, whose job it is, at least implied on some level, to keep watch of the dragon, the most dangerous thing in their world, in order to just make sure that they're safe. If they happen to see the dragon coming toward the town for any reason, the first thing they should be doing is warning everyone else and preparing the town for the catastrophe that lies ahead, not burying their heads in the sand and hoping that it's something good. But yet, isn't this what people do? And instead of taking those words of warning in order to protect themselves and the people they care about, the well-being of the entire city, they respond like this. "The king beneath the mountain," they shouted. "His wealth is like the sun, his silver like a mountain, his rivers golden run. The river is running gold from the mountain," they cried, and everywhere windows were opening and feet were hurrying. They did not understand what was happening and would much rather believe their hopes than the reality of the situation. And fortunately for all of them, the pessimist, and put this in quotes, actually takes action on this. He decides to go inform the master. He yells, "The dragon is coming, or I am a fool. Cut the bridges. To arms! To arms!" Now, upon reading this again, I noticed the "cut the bridges" line, and I thought, wait, why cut the bridges? How does that make sense? This is not an encroaching army that requires the ground or bridges in order to approach this town in the middle of a lake. This is a dragon. It can fly. But I'm I think I'm wrong in this estimation. It seems later that we will see that Smaug's intention was to actually walk across the bridges into town, and probably would have been even more destructive on the ground than simply flying in the air and dropping fire and breaking things while flying by. He planned to walk in directly and take things down face to face, which is even more terrifying when you think about it. So they sound the alarms. Finally, people start reacting appropriately as it becomes more and more obvious that their hopes of gold coming down the river is totally not what's happening here. And their response to this is interesting because they are at least capable of being ready. We're told that every vessel in the town was filled with water. It makes sense. They know that this dragon is coming, and the dragon is fire. Now, think about this. The dragon doesn't simply wield fire. We learn later that he avoids the lake because if he were to fall in the lake, his fire would be extinguished. The fire is part of his very essence. Also, filling vessels with water allows them to douse things. Most of the town is made of wood, and to douse that wood ahead of time in order to make sure that it is wet and it is soaked so that it is less likely to catch fire, which is smart. And as Smaug approaches, you can hear his roar, and the lake ripples red. Again, red, this foreboding red color of fire when bad things are happening. Beneath the awful beating of his wings, people are panicked and they are responding in all sorts of different ways. And I feel like this is one of the things that the movie actually portrays pretty well, is the panic and how everyone is responding and how few people actually mount arms against the dragon, start shooting arrows or trying to do something. So many of them start trying to leave. We also get this line: if he plunged into it, meaning the water, this is talking about the distinction between him and the water, a vapor and a steam would arise enough to cover all the land with a mist for days. But the lake was mightier than he. It would quench him before he could pass through. This reminds me of the water being used to attack Isengard in the Two Towers. Again, we get this glimpse of nature and the power of nature being greater than any evil force or any evil creature. The water itself is still stronger than Smaug. And there are so many fun descriptions in this section that really paint these beautiful pictures. A hail of dark arrows leapt up and snapped and rattled on his scales and jewels. Remember, his scales have jewels kind of encrusted between them. He's shiny, and yet these arrows, as we learned before, can't penetrate these scales, and so they rattle and break off of him. The dragon's wrath blazed to its height till he was blind and mad with it. He became so angry at these people because, of course, they were his enemy. They needed to be destroyed, even though they did very little to help the dwarves. And you have to think about the scope of all of this. The thing the dragon is upset at is Bilbo taking a golden cup from his hoard, and now he is leveling a town. No one had dared to give battle to him for many an age, nor would they have dared now if it had not been for the grim-voiced man, Bard was his name, who ran to and fro cheering on the archers and urging the master to order them to fight to the last arrow. I get another glimpse here of the Two Towers, of Aragorn rallying the troops. Another example of a real leader, somebody who leads from the front, not from behind. But also, we get other glimpses here of how terrible Smaug is, his narcissism. How dare they fight back? He's there to destroy them. They should just bow down and worship him or run in fear. To stand back against him, to actually mount a response? How dare they? Don't they know who he is? And then he starts enjoying it. He lights the trees on fire, and the descriptions of the shore shining like copper and like blood with leaping shadows of dense black at their feet is so evocative. Then down he swooped straight through the arrow storm, reckless in his rage, taking no heed to turn his scaly sides towards his foes, seeking only to set the town ablaze. He's forgotten to be careful, or he truly is a narcissist and believes that he has no vulnerability at all, even if he is aware of the gap in his scales. This is a very clear example of hubris. And although there were many people who panicked and ran, there were still more who actually responded and acted to defend their city, tossing water. As soon as flames would lick up anywhere, more water would be tossed on the flames in order to drench them by 100 hands. A sweep of his tail, and this is back to Smaug, and the roof of the great house crumbled and smashed down. So now he's down in the midst of the buildings, breaking them with his body, not just his flames. And yet, no arrow hindered Smaug and hurt him more than a fly from the marshes. They barely felt like little bites, little stings from flies. Now, with so many of these action sequences in Tolkien's books, they go by so quickly. And this is one of my, it's not really a complaint, one of my wishes that things had been slightly different in the way he wrote things. Yes, he'll spend a large section of a book describing the plants and the trees on the side of the road and all sorts of other little details like that. But when it comes to combat, it happens so fast. And I have to wonder if this is because of his own experiences in war. Oftentimes you wait for very long periods of time, noticing the plants on the side of the road or the dirt at the bottom of your trench. And then all of a sudden battle erupts. And then it's done. It happens very quickly. It's time for that spring reset. I'm taking a look at everything in my closet and figuring out that, oh no, this absolutely needs to go. And it's about time I replace things so that my clothes aren't older than my 15-year-old. Now you might think that they lasted that long because they were well made, but no, they're in terrible condition. Unlike the new jeans I just got from Quince. Jeans have always been my personal go-to because you can kind of wear them for lots of different things, but maybe they're not your thing. Maybe you're looking for, 100% European linen with insanely soft flow knit activewear fabric. It's definitely getting warmer, and their flow knit activewear is moisture wicking, anti-odor, and soft enough that you'll actually want to wear it every day. So pick out what you want. You can't go wrong because they have prices 50 to 60% less than similar brands. And like I said before, they are high quality. I continue to wear their clothes all the time, and I know that these new jeans are going to last me a lot better than the other things in my wardrobe. And on top of it, they look great. They're so comfortable, and I spent just as much on the jeans that I am now cleaning out of my wardrobe. So if you're looking for something better, just all around better, go check out Quince. So go do it right now. Refresh your wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/ringslore for free shipping and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. Go to quince.com/ringslore for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/ringslore. And yet there's still so much more detail that could have been poured into this. But we do get something. The next section starts with, people starting to give up, jumping in the water, flinging down their weapons, mourning and weeping, them getting upset at the dwarves, thinking that this is their fault, which, it kind of is. And then the master turning and getting in his boat, hoping to save himself. Notice the master here is not a leader. He is a coward, and we get this premonition. Soon all the town would be deserted and burned down to the surface of the lake. That was the dragon's hope. And he was enjoying it. Okay, get in your boats. Make your way to the land on the sides. I will hunt you down. I will burn down all the trees around the edges of the lake. I will destroy all of you, and I will have fun. This will be a sport, is what he's thinking. Like a terrible, gigantic cat playing with mice. And then we get the turn. But there was still a company of archers. Notice, one company of archers that held their ground among the burning houses. And this is absolutely attributed to the bravery and the leadership of a single individual. Bard, their captain, grim-voiced and grim-faced. Exactly the same description as the pessimistic individual previously, because it's him. His friends accused him of prophesying floods and poisoned fish, though they knew his worth and courage. In the midst of this tragedy, this climactic event, they don't push back on his pessimism anymore. In fact, they understand that he actually is courageous. the ability to take on those worries and those concerns actually makes him a better leader, somebody that they should follow. And then we're given a little bit of a backstory. He was a descendant in long line of Girion, Lord of Dale, whose wife and child had escaped down the running river from the ruin long ago. Now remember, there's an important connection to the leadership of Dale. There's the connection to not only the dwarves and the friendship with the Dwarven Kingdom, but the fact that these were a special kind of people. And they had the ability to understand the language of those little thrushes, the little birds. And in typical Tolkien fashion, things are getting absolutely to the most dire of ends. His companions start leaving him, maybe because they start genuinely fearing for their lives. They don't feel like their arrows are really doing anything. They're running out of arrows. We aren't given more details here, but it would be nice if we were. And then we're told this. He bent his bow for the last time. And as he bends his bow, he doesn't loose it. This old thrush flies up to him, and he realizes in this moment, didn't know this before now, that he can actually understand what it's saying, because it's something that is in his blood. It's almost as if his line was special. Maybe there's some Númenórean descent somewhere. I don't really know. But there is a special connection to nature. Wait, it said to him. The moon is rising. Look for the hollow of the left breast as he flies and turns above you. Now, this is the first mention of the moon. The moon is mentioned again. The moon shines light enough in this darkness to be able to see clearly where he needs to aim his bow, that missing scale. The moon itself, just like the lake, is an adversary to evil. Think about the origins of the moon. The origins of the moon go back to the Valar, to the trees. Nature itself is working against this evil. The moon rose above the eastern shore and silvered his great wings. What a beautiful description. Arrow, said the bowman, black arrow. And then we get this. I have saved you to the last. You have never failed me, and always I have recovered you. I had you from my father, and he from of old. If ever you came from the forges of the true king under the mountain, go now and speed well. Now, there's a few things to note here. First of all, did you notice that he questions that possibly this arrow was actually forged by the dwarves themselves from the true king of the mountain years ago? This isn't something that the men of Laketown made. This isn't something that the men of Dale made. This is something that the dwarves, the true kings of the mountain, forged long ago. Now, secondly, this absolutely feels like a Deus Ex Machina at first glance. I mean, let's be honest. He happens to show up, be defending the town with a bow, using regular arrows. A thrush shows up who he didn't know he could communicate with, tells him, hey, look in a very specific spot for the dragon's weak spot, the weak place, the one place you can shoot an arrow. It feels almost like Star Wars in the idea of Luke shooting that torpedo into the hole in the Death Star. But anyway, and then not only that, but he happens to have this black arrow that he's kept forever and always recovers. He's shot it before, but he always gets it back. And we didn't have any mention of this before. So there's like a Chekhov's gun situation where the thing was mentioned and it didn't occur, or it did, like the foreshadowing of this. Now, but think about it. The thrush was foreshadowed. We knew this would be coming, or at least enough happened with the thrush for us to be able to be okay with the idea that the thrush can show up and talk with this individual. It seems magical, yes, but then again, this is Tolkien's Middle-earth. There's a lot of magical stuff. And the idea that a specific race or line of descendants have a slightly different function that allows them to magically operate with natural things in a way that other peoples don't understand and can't seem to do has firmly been established. It's been established with the elves. It's been established even with some of the things that Bilbo can do, and the fact that he can walk so quietly, and even the dwarves. So that's not a surprise. The only real surprise here is the fact that he happens to have this black arrow. Now, let me ask you a question. Is this the only arrow that would have been able to kill Smaug? Or is it just a special arrow that he saved from long ago that carries more symbolism than the feature of being able to pierce the dragon? If you think to the movies, the black arrow is extremely large, and it's a very special kind of arrow that is big enough to take down a dragon. But in this case, it is simply a black arrow forged by dwarves that fits on his regular bow and that he's able to shoot to exactly the right spot. The surprise here is not that the arrow is black or that it was the only arrow that could have pierced the dragon. It is simply that the thrush shows up, tells him where to aim, and his aim is true. All of that had been foreshadowed, or at least the thrush part, and the fact that he's a good archer isn't really a surprise. There are lots of good archers. And maybe there's something special about the black arrow in the sense that it is the revenge of the dwarves from the past in something that they made being used to take the dragon down. It's like the ultimate bookend to the dragon. That feels more literary to me than this idea that the black arrow was the only one that could have pierced the opening in his hide. So my perspective on this is that the arrow is symbolic, and this is not a Deus Ex Machina situation. This is something that was foreshadowed with the thrush. It is something that Bilbo clearly discovered. It's information that we, the readers, knew about. And Bard the bowman is heroic not because he could shoot better than other archers or because he happened to have an arrow, the only one that could have pierced the dragon's hide. None of that is true. It's simply he was of the correct line and he was a courageous individual who could understand the message from the thrush and then acted upon it using a symbolic weapon. That's it. And it actually plays better that way. The story is better when you perceive it from that perspective. Perceive it from that perspective is a little redundant, but you get what I'm saying here. And nowhere else in the text can I find anywhere that says the black arrow was the only thing that would have slayed the dragon. It doesn't say that. That's something that we seem to hold on to for some reason, but it's not true. Then we get to the end of this section. The dragon swooped once more lower than ever, and as he turned and dived down, his belly glittered white with sparkling fires of gems in the moon, but not in one place. I love the glittering and yet the moon revealing that location. It's all working in synergy. Nature, the information, Bard being heroic, all of that comes together. The great bow twanged. The black arrow sped straight from the string, straight for the hollow by the left breast where the foreleg was flung wide. In it smote and vanished barb, shaft, and feather. So fierce was its flight, with a shriek that deafened men, felled trees, and split stone. How evocative is that? Smaug shot spouting into the air, turned over and crashed down from on high in ruin. Full on the town he fell. His last throws splintered it to sparks and glades. The lake roared in. A vast steam leapt up, white in the sudden dark under the moon. Notice, the lake takes him, and the steam is white. It's not black. There was a hiss, a gushing whirl, and then silence. And that was the end of Smaug and Esgaroth, but not of Bard. Thanks for tuning in this week and supporting the show and being here. I don't know exactly what we'll do for the bonus episode this week. I think I might dive a little bit more into Bard's background, but I think that the information on that is limited. Haven't done the episode yet, haven't really gotten into the research, so I'll figure that out when I get there. But if you are somebody who is signed up on the Patreon, you'll get something. You know how this works. You get a bonus episode for every episode. And thank you to all of you for your continued support. If you'd like to join on Patreon, patreon.com/LOTR Lorecast, and you can be like one of these people and get shouted out for signing up. Bruce W., Aiden E., Andrew G., and Cumbria Strong. I'm mispronouncing names all over the place. But thank you so much for your support and for joining us. Hope you're enjoying your ad-free episode. For those of you who get bonus episodes and VIP members get shout outs like Fulcrum, Apollo, David S., Daniel Nightweaver, Capenna, Richard J., TJT, AK Music Lover, Barney D., Azel Razzle, Lori B., Mason Weathertop, Jezer, Gimli a Break, Divine Madman, Rosie Rose, Ginger Fury, Huon is my hero, Aldarion was right, Avariel, Matt, Party Snacks, Single Ent looking for Entwives, Philip M, Norwegianius, Balragius Hunteress, I guess I'm getting better at that, Chris K, and Bruce W. Thank you so much for your support. Also, if you'd like to help out in other ways, you can leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. I don't have any new ones that I can see currently, but if a new one pops up and I can read it, I will read it out. And helping out by leaving reviews and recommending to your friends and commenting. If there's something really cool that happens in an episode, please feel free to comment, share it on social media or whatever. All of that stuff is super helpful, and you are all the best. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next time as we continue with the events after the dragon's dead. But also, in the meantime, stay safe out there, and if you do see a dragon coming, then stand your ground. Warn your friends. Be Bard. Don't be the other people. All right, I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to the Lord of the Rings Lorecast. If you'd like to learn more about other fantasy worlds, check out my other podcasts, the Elder Scrolls Lorecast, the Witcher Lorecast, and more at robotsradio.net. If you'd like to reach out, I'd love to hear from you. Send me a note on Twitter at robots_radio, or join our amazing community on the Robots Radio Discord. There are links in the show notes, or just search Robots Radio Discord, or find the link on robotsradio.net. I'll see you next time.